My name's Win, and it has been a very long time since I last uploaded a video, purely because life keeps getting in the way. Do I have much to report? No, because that is not the video for today. Today we're talking about Peter Cushing. When life is a bit rubbish, that's what I do. I go and watch a Peter Cushing film, or I make my dad sit down and listen to me talk about Peter Cushing for several hours. So that is what we're doing today, but hopefully not for several hours, in part because I want to get this video done. This video has been an extraordinarily long time coming. A, because I think my phone hates me, and perhaps the concept of this video. B, life gets in the way, as I said. And yeah, I don't know. I've had copies of the notes for this video probably for about 3 years. They have lived in 2 different uni rooms, a student house, and this house. And I'm not doing it with the notes today because I just think, I've watched this film 3 times. Unlike the other Questionable Cushing video, unlike the other film that I have discussed as part of this little mini-series, Corruption, you can pick up The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires in HMV, like, today. I don't know why you would want to do that, but you can. It was released during a time where Hammer was running out of money in the 70s. And they attempted to capitalise on what was doing well at the time, so a lot of sexploitation films, fusion kind of films. This is a martial arts horror thing that doesn't entirely work, and I think the biggest reason for that is because of the way that it was handled culturally, presented culturally. It is very much of its time. I hope it wouldn't be remade today. It tries to be aware of this fact for the briefest of moments. Cushing is playing Van Helsing, of course, and after we have this really odd prologue with like a discount Christopher Lee, because couldn't get Christopher Lee to appear in this, we see Cushing lecturing on vampires, and he says to his audience that he is very aware that he's a foreigner, that he's in China, but he is a guest there, and that nobody has to listen to what he's saying. And you're like, oh, okay, this is self-awareness. This is good. They might as well have not kept that line in, because there's also a bit where they go to this ball, hosted by and for a number of like British embassy geezers, and there's a woman who is not English, so they're very much the kind of exciting, exotic European woman. Where's she from? Who is travelling on her own, and there are a couple of comments about the fact that she's travelling on her own as a woman, and like, it doesn't feel as though that was put in for the sake of historical accuracy. It just feels uncomfortable. I'm not saying that there are not other uncomfortably misogynistic things in other films of this era, in Hammer films and Amicus films, but this film just feels uncomfortable. And I also love at one point, Cushing falls asleep at one point, and it's because, they're camping down for the night, but it is so boring. I've watched this film 3 times, as I said, for this video. And they tried, but it doesn't quite. I realise I've not explained the plot to you, and that is because the plot is not really there. I'm not sure who wrote this. Pretty sure it wasn't Jimmy Sangster, because, I mean, even so, Jimmy Sangster directed Lust for a Vampire, which is the second of the Karnstein trilogy, the second of the films in the Karnstein trilogy, and he's since said in interviews that, I say since, I don't know if he's still with us. Probably not. If indeed you are, Jimmy, when I edit this video and put a little thing on the screen, good for you. If not, yeah. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna dig myself a hole. He said in interviews that he does not like that film, and that he is glad that he was never asked to direct another film. But I feel like that film works. Like, I like Lost for a Vampire. I see why people might not have done. It does feel different to Hammer's vampire films, but it's not so different that it feels wrong. And The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires does feel wrong. The timeline doesn't make sense. If you're trying to, I don't think the original Dracula from '58 gives us any indication as to the time period, like, really, like, officially. It's not. A number of Hammer films, I can't think of any off the top of my head now, I'm afraid, but a number of Hammer films do list the time in which they're set. If we assume that the original Dracula from '58 is set around the time that the original novel was released, which was in 1897, I believe, the timeline that they give us in Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires only makes sense if Dracula is somehow able to exist in multiple places. But it just doesn't make sense. There's also this odd bit with Discount Christopher Lee talking to this head of this secret order who wants to be possessed by Dracula so that he can use vampires to exact his revenge on this family, this village. And Dracula speaks in English, and this guy speaks in his native language. And I say native language because I'm afraid I don't know enough about China and Chinese culture to say whether there are like which dialect was used. I don't know. I don't know how much research was done either. I'm assuming not a lot, because apparently the reason that a lot of the soldiers of this like vampire thing, this little army, because there are more than 7 of them, the reason that they look so confused and things look so scattered is because they had a real issue with communication on the set. It was filmed on location, but they didn't do a lot to kind of facilitate between the cast and the crew, which, like, I get that this film was released in the 70s, but I think Hammer usually took more care when it comes to things like that. I say I think because I've not done as much research into, like, the behind the scenes things, but this film feels sloppy in its organisation, unfortunately. But anyway, they do have this character, Carl, I believe he's called, talking to Dracula at the beginning in his language, and Dracula responds to him in English. So he can understand the language but isn't willing to speak it, or doesn't for the sake of the audience, which seems silly because of course there are subtitles on screen so we can understand what Clara is saying. And if the two were speaking in their own language, then Dracula would surely be speaking Romanian because it's a Transylvania thing, but I don't know. So there's that. There's also the fact that Van Helsing has a son called Leland, and he's so stupid. I'm sorry. He is just... Okay, I might have mentioned before, there are two, what I like to call idiot Watsons, one of which worked with Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce, and one of which worked with Douglas Wilmer and then Peter Cushing. Nigel, what's his name? Not Nigel Green. Love that guy. Nigel Stock. And they are exasperating because they just are not in keeping with the Watson that you expect. This guy, a retired army doctor who's able to keep up with the intellect and the quirkosity, we're going with a new word, of Holmes. And they are exasperating, but in a way that is amusing, so I kind of like whether they were meant to be comic relief or not, I'm not sure, but I suppose that is possible. Leland Van Helsing, I cannot, he has no redeeming qualities, and of course he gets the one of only two women at the end of the film. I don't know what he doesn't have a lot going for him. The chemistry that he has with Cushing it's just not there. And of course he's not in any of the other films. I'm pretty sure there was no plan for this film to even exist. As far as I'm concerned, the Dracula saga for Hammer ends with the Satanic Rites of Dracula, and that's it. That is it. I often forget that this film exists, and yeah, I'm happy to keep it that way. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It feels uncomfortable, culturally women's righty-y, and it's boring, and it's really dark as well. You can't really see what's going on. There's this bit with the battle at the end where one of the soldiers just looks into the camera and is clearly just... I'm going to see if I can find a screenshot of it and put it in the thumbnail. That's the best part of the film, because this guy just looks so confused, and I love it. I feel his pain. I'm often confused in life, and yeah. So this film is a questionable Cushing for many reasons. Watch it if you like, not least because I've not really given you spoilers. I remember odd bits of the plot, but there ain't really a lot to remember. I don't know why I wrote so many notes. Would not recommend. I would rather watch Corruption. I've not actually watched Corruption in its entirety, purely because of the whole premise of the film. But I would rather watch Corruption than this. I suppose it's because Corruption knows how, or at least I feel like Corruption knows how sordid, yeah, we're going to go with sordid, how sordid it is, and how uncomfortable and completely over the top and awful it is. And I think The Seven Golden Vampires was trying to do something, but I don't think it knew what. I don't think anyone knew what they were doing. Does Cushing give a good performance? Yes, he always did. He absolutely makes the most of what he's got. It feels like the Van Helsing we know. Okay, I mean, he's a little bit more tired, but Satanic Rites felt so final. for those of you that have not seen Satanic Rites, I will put a little timestamp so you can skip this bit because a little spoiler, but at the end of Satanic Rites, Van Helsing takes away Dracula's ring, which means that nobody can bring him back because his greatest wish by the end is to stop being brought back. The premise of Satanic Rites is that he wants to release this plague so that everyone dies and nobody is able to bring him back and there is nobody for him to feed on. And so for Van Helsing to take his ring... Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Oh look, there's some tissue here. Apologies. For Van Helsing to take his ring, to stop that from happening, you know, that's it. You could say that symbolically that represents some interesting things. And I would love to talk more about the Dracula series because I did do that video with my dad, a couple of videos where we discussed the Lee versus Cushing, and of course we discussed in part the Dracula and the Frankenstein series. But yeah, it'd be fascinating to have a proper dialogue about that. But that film just feels like it ties everything together. And Seven Golden Vampires, it's just not it. It doesn't feel like a Hammer film, really. It doesn't feel like a Hammer Dracula film, and I think it's almost an insult to this series, which I think, as a fan, is the reason that I like to pretend it doesn't exist. If you've seen The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, let me know what you think. Is it one that you would like to own in your collection? You know, I'm not somebody that likes to own things for the sake of owning them. I'm never going to own Cushing's entire back catalogue because plenty of his films are not available in this country or lost. So, for example, he played Mr. Darcy in a version of Pride and Prejudice, and that film is gone. There's like one picture of it, and you know, I'm never going to own everything, and I wouldn't want to because, yeah, some of the films are just not. It's okay to admit that some of them have not aged well, and you don't have to like everything. This film was also around the time that Cushing did a lot of work because he'd lost his wife and he just filled that void with work. So he wasn't as selective as Lee, for example. So Lee chose to not star in a number of the Dracula-like little offshoots, or to have Lee Toston. No, because he's in all of them except. So he's not in Brides of Frankenstein, Brides of Dracula, or this one. And the others, he mostly is silent because he just didn't like the dialogue. And he wasn't in any of the other Frankensteins. When Cushing didn't like the dialogue, he'd rewrite bits of the dialogue. For those of you that haven't seen pictures of the scripts that he annotated, you get on to the Peter Cushing Appreciation Society. Do it. It's good. It's worth it. And that's not to say that not being selective is a bad thing. You shouldn't be afraid to step into a particular role, but what film means has changed. The way that actors choose projects that they choose to be involved in has changed. Certainly, if Cushing were a young man starting out in his acting journey now, his career would be very different. He would likely be a different kind of person, and so despite the odd, despite some of the odd roles and films that he was in, his legacy still feels like a very pure one. It still feels, it feels like a privilege to be able to witness it, to still know his name, and to be able to watch all of these amazing things that he did. So I don't feel that this film, I'm glad that people don't know him for this film, because there are plenty of actors who are not remembered very well because of one film that they did, because of one role that they had, and I'm glad that that didn't happen for Cushing with films like this. So thank you so much for watching. Amazingly, this is a little bit of a shorter one for me. And yes, hopefully I will see you again very soon. I have a plan for my next Questionable Cushing film, but if you have any suggestions, then let me know. I will see you again very soon. Take care. Bye.